Okay, let's talk about this because this is a story. I haven't seen anybody talk about it yet, but let's go. Um, Bill Simmons, the Bill Simmons podcast. Bill Simmons shared a story, and he said that Max Kellerman and Rich Paul, LeBron James agent, are about to start their own podcast focusing on sports and culture. And it's supposed to start at the end of this month, as far as I know. And there's an article on Awful Announcing, and Bill Simmons shares a story on how he found out about this. Now, I'm going to read this article to you. It's not long, and then I'm kind of going to share my thoughts on this. So the article goes like this. The title of it is Bill Simmons shares a story behind Max Kellerman and Rich Paul podcast coming to the Ringer. At the start of the latest episode of the Bill Simmons podcast, the show's host confirmed that a new podcast featuring Max Kellerman and Rich Paul is coming to the Ringer. If that premise sounds surprising to you, you're not alone, as even Simmons admitted to being surprised when Kellerman first pitched it to him. According to the Ringer founder, he had been hoping to work with the former First Take co-host ever since he was first laid off ESPN in 2023. And when he finally became available in recent months, Kellerman informed Simmons he was already in talks to host a show alongside Paul, who happens to be one of the most powerful agents in all sports. And this is Bill Simmons talking. He was like, "Well, I'm a little bit down the road with this other idea," Simmons recalled. And it was this show that he would have been thinking about with, as it turned out, it was Rich Paul. And they've been friends for a while. They've always wanted to do something together, like a back and forth, the kind of Ringer type show that we would do, like a conversation show, chemistry show. Simmons proceeded to meet with Kellerman and Paul, unsure of how the latter would receive him. But following their conversation, the ex-ESPN columnist was sold that such a podcast, which he says will focus on sports and culture, could be a hit. "I didn't really know Rich that well." That's Bill Simmons speaking again. "And I think he didn't think I liked him. I didn't think he liked me. And that got hashed out about 10 minutes, Simmons said. And more importantly, just watching the way they interacted, I became convinced, like, oh, these guys, I get it. These guys should have a show." Now, while Simmons didn't reveal the name of the show, which Front Office Sports Ryan Glassspiegel first broke the news of last week, he did share that it will be a video podcast running 3 times each week between Kellerman and Paul connections. One would imagine that they'd be able to compile quite the guest list as it prepares to make its debut later this month. Now, this is pretty big news because, as we know, Clutch Sports has been entering the media more and more, getting connections in the media, setting up businesses with the media personalities. Of course, those media personalities mostly have a positive take on LeBron James and Clutch Sports. 2 perfect examples which have admitted on video that actually do business with Clutch Sports and Rich Paul are. One of them is the Gil's Arena show, the Gil's Arena show host, with Gil sitting there. They are on video, and he says literally that we have something in the works with Clutch. So we have to, he wanted Mark Cuban to mention LeBron James in some of the best players that he's ever seen in the 21st century. And the second one, as far as I remember, was Nick Wright. And Nick Wright is also directly on video in one of my videos on my channel, saying directly that he does business with Rich Paul. So one can only imagine what kind of influence doing that business with Rich Paul and having those connections thanks to him, and how that influences your opinion and all that kind of stuff. So I was a little bit upset about this when I first found out about it. But I've read into it a little bit. I've researched Max Kellerman a little bit. I haven't seen him in a while since he's been on the show with Stephen A. Smith years ago. And I've looked a little bit more into what his views are on the NBA GOAT and all that other stuff. And Max Kellerman had some views that I didn't agree with him on sports, as I was listening to him. But as far as I know, he respects Michael Jordan as the NBA GOAT, and he's always said that Michael Jordan is the NBA GOAT, the greatest of all time. He had the highest peak of all NBA players ever. Nobody was as good as Michael Jordan at his peak. The only difference with LeBron James is he had his peak, which is lower than Michael's, for a longer period of time. And he gave conditions, you know, if LeBron James wins multiple championships and all that other stuff, he can potentially be in the conversation. But he always has said, as far as I remember, that Michael Jordan is the greatest NBA player ever. Now, as I researched that history and reminded myself what his views were, I kind of came to this conclusion. I'm going to keep an open mind on this podcast. I hope it's not like Mind the Game, where LeBron James speaks and Steve Nash goes, yes, 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 yes. I hope that's not going to happen. So I hope this is really going to be a back and forth. And we know what Rich Paul is going to say. We kind of know what Max Kellerman is going to say. But I'm glad at least that potentially Max is a person that's going to be on this podcast that's going to counteract a little bit of that narrative on LeBron James being pushed. So I'm hoping that this podcast will actually be somewhat objective. I don't expect it to be objective, period, just because Rich Paul is going to be on it. But I hope it's going to be objective and we can listen to honest opinions on both sides of the story, Michael, LeBron, and the other players as well. I want to hear stories about Kobe Bryant and this and that. I want to hear these guys talking about it and kind of have an objective look. Listen, we haven't seen Rich Paul much. I've seen him make comments a couple times on videos and things like that. I didn't like what he had to say most of the time that I saw it. I think he was mostly one-sided towards LeBron and overall narrative control for him. But I'm hopeful for this, and I'm going to give it a chance. I'm going to watch it, and you know, otherwise, if it's not going to be that great and I'm not going to agree with it, listen, I'm going to have more content to talk about. So I don't mind that either. But I want to look at this with an open mind, and I want to see if this actually is going to be something objective that will be an outlier on most of the stuff that we see online these days from Nick Wright and Gil's Arena and, you know, looking at what Draymond Green is saying after he became the Clutch puppet, you could say. After he signed with Clutch, he completely 180 degrees on LeBron James being the GOAT, which definitely the signing had something to do with that. And I have a video on that as well, what he was saying before that happened and how he's behaving and all that stuff. So that's an interesting video to see. I'm going to try to include that at the end of this video, so take a look at it. But I'm leaving an open mind, and we'll see what's going to happen once it airs. Of course, I'm going to share my opinion on it, and we'll go from there. We'll see what it is. Like I said, worst case, we're going to have some content to talk about and debunk and all that other stuff. So let me know what you guys think. Max Kellerman, Rich Paul, new podcast 3 times a week. What do you guys think this is going to be? What are you expecting? You think Max Kellerman is just going to be the same kind of guy like Steve Nash is on Mind the Game? I like Steve Nash as a player. I think he's a great player, but I'm sorry, but he's basically a head nodding bobblehead on LeBron James' podcast. That's all I see. So it is what it is. But do you think it's going to be different? Do you think this is going to be more objective, or you think it's going to be more of the same? So let me know. Comment section is open. Like, share, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Talk to you later. Peace.